You've arrived at Cozy Side Audio, where dreams begin with a story. Tonight's tale is here to help you wind down and find peace. If this brings you comfort, please like, share, and subscribe so more dreamers can join us. Let the night carry you, and let's begin.
CozySideAudio presents Balloon Strings. Chapter 1. The Boy Who Couldn't Be Heard. The wind in Aramori carried more than leaves. It carried songs. High above the cobblestone paths and timber-roofed houses, balloons drifted gently in the air like glowing lanterns. They followed children wherever they went, each one tethered to a thin, invisible string that only the child could see. To the untrained eye, they looked ordinary, colorful, soft, round things that shimmered faintly under sunlight. But to anyone listening closely, truly listening, they told stories. Not with words, with music. When a child felt joy, their balloon would sing like a sunrise over chimes. When they were afraid, the string might tremble, and the balloon would hum a low, glassy note like a held breath. Each emotion had its tune. Laughter rang bright and bouncing like drums. Sadness murmured in slow piano keys. And wonder, oh, wonder, was a melody that floated even after the child had gone home, like a lullaby echoing between branches. But there was one balloon that made no sound at all. It belonged to a boy named Souta. Souta lived at the edge of Aramori, where the town touched the forest and the wind tangled itself in pine needles and the dust of fox trails. His house was made of wood and windows and very little else. It sat quietly, much like him. He didn't speak, not because he didn't want to. He simply couldn't. The doctors had called it selective mutism, though no one could quite agree if it was psychological or emotional or something stranger still. The truth was, even when Souta wanted to speak, when he felt words swelling up in his throat like water against a dam, they didn't come out. They stayed inside, heavy and unseen. So he stopped trying. He let the world speak around him, and he listened. And built. Souta was a tinkerer. His room was a jungle of gears, hollow reeds, glass orbs, and twisted bits of copper. He made instruments, not ones you'd find in music stores or classrooms, but inventions that looked like something out of dreams. A flute carved from an old bone that only played underwater. A harp with strings made of spider silk, so fine they trembled when someone lied near it. A wooden box that sang lullabies when placed near a sleeping child's balloon. Each device had one goal: to hear emotions more clearly. But no matter how many instruments he built, no matter how carefully he tuned or tested them, there was one sound he could never catch: his own. His balloon floated above him like a quiet moon, pale and silver blue. Others had called it beautiful, in the way quiet snow is beautiful. But no melody ever came from it, not even a whisper. Souta would lie in the field behind his house at dusk, all his inventions laid out like offerings, and wait. Wait for it to sing. It never did. The first time he saw Hana, she was talking to a balloon like it was a friend. She was standing on a bench in the middle of the market square, holding the string of her golden balloon in one hand and gesturing wildly with the other. Her long brown hair bounced with each word, and her eyes sparkled with something too bright to be contained in one face. "I'm telling you, you're playing it too fast again," she huffed. "You're supposed to wait until I say now, before you start the glissando." The balloon pulsed in warm tones, like the strum of a harp dappled in sunlight. A few market-goers smiled politely and walked faster. Others just stared. Souta stayed hidden behind a cart of pears, watching. Then, as if the wind itself had whispered his name into her ear, Hana turned. Their eyes met. She hopped off the bench, skipped over to him, and without hesitation said, "You're the boy with the quiet balloon, aren't you?" Souta blinked. She wasn't teasing. She wasn't pitying him. She just said it like it was a simple truth, like saying, "The sky is blue," or "Today smells like bread." "I'm Hana," she said, beaming. "And you're?" He hesitated. She leaned closer. "Oh, you don't talk, do you?" Souta gave a tiny nod. "Cool," she said immediately. "Talking's overrated anyway." Then she tilted her head. "But I heard you make sound machines. Is that true?" Souta reached into his satchel and pulled out a small brass disc. He clicked a switch. It began to vibrate softly, emitting a low tone that shimmered like a heartbeat in glass. Hana gasped. "That's gorgeous." She leaned in closer, face practically glowing. "What's it do?" He tapped a small button on the side. The pitch changed, becoming warmer, fuller. It's like it's translating something. She stared at the device, then at him. Are you trying to hear what balloons say? Souta looked up at his own, silent, pale, unmoving. She followed his gaze. Then, softly, you're trying to hear yourself. The next time she showed up, it was with a satchel full of notebooks and a half-eaten apple. I've been thinking, she said, mouth still full. What if we went on a journey? Souta tilted his head. Not a real journey, she added quickly. Well, not at first, but like a journey across feelings. A trip through other people's songs. She pulled out a notebook covered in stickers and little scribbles. On the front was written in messy crayon, the song of childhood. I'm going to write a symphony, she said. But not with notes. With balloons. I want to understand what growing up sounds like, really sounds like. Not the boring grown-up version. The version that only kids still carry. That's why I need your help. She pointed at his instruments. You make people's feelings into music. I want to turn that music into stories. Souta blinked. He felt something strange and warm bubbling in his chest. He wasn't used to people asking for his help, especially not for something like this. He nodded. Really? She said, startled. You'll come. He nodded again, a little firmer. She squealed and threw her arms around him. And somewhere, high above them, Souta's balloon pulsed. Very faintly, like the pluck of a string, barely heard. That night, Souta lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling as the forest wind tapped gently at the window pane. He reached over and switched on a tiny device no bigger than a thimble. It played the sound of Hana's balloon, the moment it laughed in the market, bright and bouncing, filled with sky and questions. He held it to his heart. And then, in the quiet, he imagined what his own balloon might sound like, if it ever decided to sing. He didn't know yet, but for the first time, he wanted to find out. Chapter 2. The Town of Shattered Glass. The first town they visited was a place no one remembered fondly. It didn't have a name on the map anymore. If it ever did, the ink had long since been smudged out by weather or time or something heavier. People simply called it Shatterbend, a name whispered sideways, like something you shouldn't touch. Even the trees here looked like they didn't want to grow. Their branches curled in on themselves like tightened hands, and their leaves had a dull, bluish sheen. Every few steps, Hana would stop to squint at the sky, where children's balloons floated above narrow alleyways and leaning rooftops. Most were cracked. Some barely held shape, folded in strange angles, their surfaces splintered like old porcelain. Instead of singing, they made static, hums that cut and skipped like broken records, discordant chords that never quite landed. It felt like walking through a music box full of broken keys. Souta's hand tightened around the strap of his satchel. He could feel his balloon flutter uneasily above him, reacting not with music, but with stillness. A kind of breath-holding quiet, like a string drawn taut, but never released. Hana didn't say much at first, which surprised him. Usually, she filled every space with words, curious ones, rambling ones, ridiculous ones. But here, even she seemed muted, like her voice might bounce wrong off the walls and return as something else. Then she said, gently, "Do you hear that?" Souta nodded. She looked up at a child passing by. The girl's balloon was shaped like a tear, narrow, chipped, leaking a sound like glass being tapped rhythmically by rain. The girl's eyes were wide and distant, focused on something invisible, far beyond this town. Souta reached into his satchel and pulled out a small tuning fork wrapped in cloth. He struck it lightly against his palm, and it rang a clean note. Around them, 5 or 6 balloons quivered. Not in harmony. Not yet. But they were listening. They found the boy in a collapsed greenhouse behind an old school. He was sitting on a bed of cracked tile, surrounded by empty flower pots and vines that had long since given up. His balloon hovered just above his head, colorless, fractured, as if it had once been filled with light and now held only echoes. His name was Toma. He didn't look up when they approached, just kept scratching at the dirt with a stick, tracing lines that didn't connect. Hana crouched beside him. "Hi." No answer. She tried again, this time gentler. "I like your lines. They look like rivers." Still nothing. Souta watched the boy carefully. His eyes weren't blank. They were waiting, but not for them. For something he didn't believe would come. Souta sat across from him and took out a device made of bent copper wire, a hollowed-out seed pod, and a string of tiny bells. It looked too fragile to function, but when he twisted the side, it emitted a tone, low, uncertain, like a question asked in the dark. Toma flinched. Then he glanced up, just for a moment. Souta tilted the device slightly. The sound shifted, deepened, took on a faint echo. Toma's balloon responded, not with melody, but with tension. It rattled. Souta's fingers moved carefully, adjusting dials no bigger than sunflower seeds. Slowly, the device began to mimic the exact rhythm of the balloon's tremble. A 1-2 shudder, like footsteps that never reached the door. Toma's eyes widened. He said, hoarsely, "That's mine." They sat with him for an hour before he said anything else. His voice came out like it hadn't been used in months, quiet, uneven, like pages turning in wind. "My brother died," he said. No embellishment, no build-up, just the truth, dropped like a stone into still water. Everyone stopped talking about him, even my mom, like he never existed. But my balloon didn't stop. He stared up at it. It just got broken, and loud. Souta looked at Hana. She was silent, but her eyes were glassy. Then, carefully, she pulled out her own balloon string and held it toward Toma. "Want to hear mine?" she asked. He hesitated, then nodded. Her balloon pulsed softly, releasing a tender, wistful tune, a melody that started in minor and rose gently into something fragile and warm, like laughter on the edge of tears. Toma closed his eyes. When the melody ended, he whispered, "It sounds like missing someone." Hana smiled sadly. "It is." That night, they built something together. Souta drew the design, a harp that wouldn't play unless two hands held it at once. Toma found the materials, fragments of glass from the greenhouse, flower stems, bits of wire, even an old music box hidden beneath a pile of dead leaves. Hana wrapped the strings, 5 total, using strands of her own balloon's light, which stretched like honey when gently tugged. They placed the finished harp on a stump just outside the greenhouse. Toma pressed one hand against it. Souta followed. The harp hummed, not clearly, not loudly, but with intention. And then, Toma's balloon, fractured, dulled, released a note. One note. A soft chord, incomplete, but unmistakably his. He began to cry. Not loudly, not brokenly, just enough for the balloon to catch it. And sing. When they left the next morning, Toma stood at the edge of the forest, holding the harp like it was something alive. "Will it go away?" he asked. Hana tilted her head. "What?" "The song. Will it stop?" She looked at Souta, then back at Toma. "It might change," she said, "but it won't stop. Not if you listen." Toma nodded. Then, quietly, "Come back someday." Hana smiled. "We will." They walked until the air smelled like river moss and pine again. Souta didn't say a word, but his balloon had changed. Just a little. Still silent. But when the wind caught it just right, Hana could feel it. Like a string being tuned in the dark. She looked at him. "You know," she said, half smiling, "I think your song's going to be the weirdest, most beautiful one I've ever heard." Souta turned his face toward the breeze and let himself believe her. Chapter 3. The Girl with Too Many Balloons. It took them 2 days to reach the next town. The path curved through forests draped in moss, over creeks so shallow you could see minnows blinking in the sunlight. At night, they camped beneath trees that hummed with summer insects. Hana talked as she always did, about dreams, about what stars might sound like, about how feelings were like different kinds of weather inside your chest. Souta listened. He always listened. Sometimes, Hana would hum a tune she hadn't written down yet, just to fill the silence between the trees. And every so often, if he was paying close enough attention, Souta thought he could feel a faint quiver in his own balloon, like it was leaning forward to hear her better. They arrived at the town of Maribel just as school was letting out. Children flooded the streets in tidy uniforms, chattering like 1,000 little streams converging. Their balloons hovered close, bright and polished, bobbing just over their heads. From a distance, it looked like a sky of lanterns choreographed into perfect rows. But the music was off. Each balloon emitted a sound. Yes, but they didn't sing. They competed. Too many melodies, all layered and jumbled. A discordant orchestra of wants, expectations, rules. It wasn't noise. It was something worse. Performance. Everyone here sounded like they were trying to be the best version of something they didn't understand. They found her at the park, perched on the edge of a fountain, back perfectly straight, ankles crossed, hands folded in her lap. Her name was Maple. She had 13 balloons. Some were bright pink, others pale gold. One was black and straining at the string, like it wanted to break free. Each one made a different sound. Too many to follow, too many to hear. She didn't smile when they approached, didn't look surprised, just tilted her head slightly and said, "You're not from here." Hana laughed. "You could tell. You're not wearing uniforms. And your balloons aren't curated." Souta's brow furrowed. Maple turned her head to him, examining. "You're the boy with the silent one." Hana nodded proudly. "This is Souta, and I'm Hana. I'm Maple." She didn't offer a handshake. "And I already know why you're here. You're trying to fix people." "We're not fixing anything," Hana said softly. "We're listening." Maple's shoulders twitched. Same thing. She let them sit beside her. Or rather, she didn't stop them. Souta watched the balloons flutter above her like a kaleidoscope in chaos. Each made a different sound, a staccato march, a lullaby in reverse, a trill so high it sounded like glass. It was overwhelming. Maple saw him staring. "They're all me," she said. "That one's who I am at school. That one's who I am at home. That one's for my grandma. That one's when I get perfect scores. That one's when I don't." Souta pointed to the black balloon. Maple paused. "That one is hard to explain." Hana leaned in. "Do you like any of them?" Maple blinked, then said, "Honestly, I don't know." That afternoon, they sat in the grass and watched her balloons twist and flicker in the wind. Hana sketched the sounds into shapes, curves and spirals and jagged lines. Souta adjusted one of his instruments, a spherical tuner made of hollowed wood and light-threaded glass. When he turned it on, it began to isolate specific notes, pulling one balloon's melody at a time from the storm. He recorded them into separate vials, each one pulsing with a different sound. Maple watched silently. Eventually, she said, "You can't take them away, you know. They always come back." "We're not taking them," Hana said. "We're sorting them." "For what?" Hana smiled. "To help you choose which ones are actually yours." The process took days. Each morning, Maple returned with her notebook and sat by the fountain. She never spoke first, but she always came. Souta would isolate a balloon's melody, and Hana would trace the emotion behind it, telling stories from the sound. One day, they focused on the pink balloon that sang like applause. Hana called it the stage smile. "It wants to be seen," she said, "but it doesn't want to speak." Maple nodded. Another day, they decoded the blue one, soft and tremulous, with an undercurrent of strings being pulled too tight. Hana named it the quiet pressure. "That one's school," Maple admitted. When they reached the black balloon, Maple hesitated. "It doesn't sing," she whispered. "It hisses, like it's angry all the time." Souta turned the dial of his device with slow hands. And out came a sound not of rage, but of grief. Low, hollow. A bell rung in an empty church. Maple's hands began to shake. "I think that one's who I used to be, before I started trying to be everyone else." They built her an instrument, a handpan, shaped like a turtle's shell, with indents that corresponded to specific emotions. Each indent was tuned to the melody of one balloon. But in the center, they left a blank. "Why?" Maple asked. Hana shrugged. "That space is for the sound you haven't made yet." That night, Maple sat beside the fountain and played. She struck each note, one by one, slowly, carefully. Some chords clashed. Others hummed together like distant friends. Then she reached the center. The blank. She tapped it. No sound. She tapped again. Still nothing. Then, so quietly it could have been imagined, a tone emerged. It wasn't loud, but it was hers. A single note that neither performed nor imitated. A beginning. The next morning, she had only one balloon. It was pale lavender, and it drifted just behind her left shoulder. It played a tune like breath on glass, fragile, uncertain, and entirely her own. She stood by the gate to Maribel, a small case tucked under her arm. Inside was the handpan. "I'm going to go visit my grandma," she said, without pretending. Hana grinned. "Good luck." Maple looked at Souta. "I hope you find your own note, too." He gave a small nod. And as she walked away, Souta looked up. His balloon wasn't silent. Not anymore. It wasn't playing yet, but it was tuned. Ready. Waiting. That night, they made camp near a creek that burbled like a sleepy flute. Fireflies drifted above the grass like floating punctuation. Hana lay beside Souta, watching the stars. "You ever think," she whispered, "that maybe our balloons don't sing because they're listening to?" Souta turned to her. She smiled. "Maybe they're just waiting until we're brave enough to hear what they've been holding all along." Above them, his balloon shimmered faintly. And for just a moment, the night felt like it was holding its breath. Chapter 4, Rain Strings. The clouds rolled in slowly that morning, heavy with unshed tears. Souta and Hana walked a winding road bordered by stone fences and wind-bent grass. The world smelled of salt and wet stone, and the air had that restless hush before a storm. They reached the seaside village of Nakamizu just as the drizzle began, soft and cold, like someone tapping the surface of a sleeping thought. The village was gray. Gray sky, gray roofs, gray sea. But the people smiled anyway. Children played in yellow boots. Shops opened their windows despite the damp, and balloons floated gently overhead, each one soft-colored and translucent, like bubbles caught in a dream. Except for one. A single boy sat alone at the edge of the pier, his knees drawn to his chest, his head tipped toward the sea. His balloon was gray. Not silver, not pale, just gray, and it made no sound. They watched him for a while from behind a row of stacked crab pots. He didn't move. The balloon above him didn't waver. Hana, undeterred as always, approached first. "Hi," she said softly. "I'm Hana. This is Souta." The boy blinked but didn't speak. Hana sat beside him. "You like the rain?" He shrugged. Souta sat on the other side, adjusting his bag. Hana glanced at the balloon. "It's quiet. Like his." The boy turned slightly towards Souta, curiosity flickering across his face. "Yours doesn't sing either?" Souta shook his head. The boy gave a slow nod. "I thought I was the only one." His name was Kaido. He lived with his grandfather in a blue cottage up the slope. His parents were away for a while, and no one in town asked more than that. He came to the pier most days and stared at the ocean. People said he was a quiet boy, a polite boy, a boy who didn't cause trouble, but also a boy who never cried, never laughed, never spoke above a whisper. His balloon had always been gray. Except, he said, when it rained. Sometimes, he murmured, if the rain is heavy enough, it hums. They stayed with Kaido for days. Each morning, they met him on the pier. Each evening, they walked him home. Hana asked him questions about waves, sea glass, jellyfish dreams. Souta made small sketches of the ocean's sound, spirals of foam, the heartbeat of a tide pool. On the fourth day, the storm came. Not a drizzle. A true summer storm. Rain fell like piano keys in a fury. Wind danced across the water. And Kaido's balloon. It changed. Just a little. A ripple across its surface. A low vibration, like the beginning of a song trying to remember itself. Hana jumped up, soaked and grinning. That's it. Souta pulled his recorder from his satchel, shielding it beneath his coat. The balloon pulsed with something mournful and wide, like the echo of a wail deep beneath the sea. Then it stopped, just as quickly as it began. Kaido stared at the balloon, his face unreadable. Hana leaned close. What did it feel like? He swallowed. Like remembering something I'm not ready to remember. The next day, the rain was gone. But Kaido returned. This time, he brought something. An old violin case, dusty and faded. He placed it gently on the pier beside them, fingers trembling. This was my mom's, he said. She used to play for me before bed. Every night. Souta and Hana waited. She and my dad went out during a storm to help a stranded boat. They never came back. He opened the case. Inside was a violin with a cracked bridge, strings frayed with time. I kept waiting for her to come home, for the song to come back. But it never did. So I stopped everything. His voice caught. Even the sound. That afternoon, Souta and Hana worked with him to repair the violin. They replaced the strings with light-threaded sine cord, polished the wood with beeswax and memory. Souta adjusted the tuning pegs while Hana watched the balloon overhead, now slightly tinged with silver at the edges. When Kaido played for the first time, the bow shook in his grip. But the moment the notes spilled into the air, his balloon shivered. It didn't sing. Not yet. But it answered. They spent the evening composing. Not a full song. Just fragments. Melodies that felt like seashells, half full of ocean echoes. Hana guided him, suggesting rises and falls like waves. Souta recorded every note in tiny, glowing capsules. And then, as dusk painted the sky in lavender and smoke, they played together. Kaido's violin, Souta's glass-tuned chimes, Hana's voice. The three of them created something that wasn't quite a lullaby and not quite a storm, but something in between. A song of loss, and also of returning. By morning, Kaido's balloon had changed. Still soft, still quiet, but no longer gray. It had taken on the color of sea mist touched by morning light. That tender, unnameable hue that only lies between sorrow and hope. He hugged Hana before they left. He held Souta's hand for a moment longer than necessary. Then he looked at them both. I think I can cry now, and that's okay. And when they turned to go, Souta glanced back only once. Kaido stood tall against the sea wind, balloon hovering above his shoulder, humming a sound only rain had ever heard before. That night, by the fire, Hana said nothing for a long time. Just watched the stars flicker. Then she whispered, I think we're not just hearing other people's music anymore. Souta looked at her. She pointed to the sky. I think we're adding to it. And somewhere overhead, a tiny string quivered. A thread. A sound. A beginning of a harmony not yet written, but close. So close. Chapter 5. The Boy Who Hated His Balloon. There was music in the hills. Not the kind you could follow like a tune, but the kind that crept into your bones before you realized it. Part wind, part grass, part something else. Something human. Hana heard it before they reached the village. So did Souta. A sound like a child laughing and crying at once. Like flutes playing through cracked windows. Like a melody trying to outrun itself. As they climbed the final slope toward Tsukinu, they found the source. Or rather, the boy trying to escape it. He was running, hair wild, sleeves torn, bare feet smacking the damp earth. And above him, a balloon. Bright red, blazing, loud. It shrieked joy and grief and memories all at once. The kind of sound that made your heart ache and your stomach turn. The boy screamed back at it, furious. Shut up. His name was Riku. He hated his balloon. It won't stop, he spat later, after Hana coaxed him to sit near a rice field's edge. All day, all night it sings. Even when I sleep. He glared at the sky. People say it's beautiful. I say it's a curse. Riku was sharp-eyed and sharp-tongued. His clothes were patched from too many scrapes. But his hands, when not clenched, trembled slightly, like he was holding something broken inside. Hana sat cross-legged beside him. Has it always been loud? He nodded once. Since I was little. Souta studied the balloon. It pulsed in time with Riku's heartbeat. Bright. Aggressive. Too full. It sings my feelings before I can even feel them, Riku muttered. Before I'm ready. It tells everyone what I'm scared to say. He kicked a pebble into the water. It doesn't protect me. It exposes me. That night, Riku showed them his hiding place. It was an old windmill on the edge of the cliff. Inside, he kept jars of rocks, piles of blankets, and a slingshot aimed at the sky. I sleep here when I can't take it anymore, he said. The balloon doesn't follow me in. Souta tilted his head. It's scared of the blades, Riku said with a grin too wide for his eyes. At least something listens to me. Hana sat down beside the jars, each filled with tiny papers. What are these? He shrugged. Feelings I don't want. I write them down, seal them, trap them so the balloon can't use them. She picked one up. Riku snatched it away. Don't. Silence stretched. Then he sighed. Sorry. I just don't like people seeing the mess. The next day, they tried something new. Hana had an idea. What if we help you conduct your balloon? Riku looked like she'd suggested hugging a volcano. You want me to play along with that thing? Souta pulled out one of his handmade instruments, a hollow wood flute strung with silver reeds that shimmered in light. Riku scoffed. But he took it, and when he blew into it, the balloon shifted. Its screaming melody bent. For a moment, it synchronized, became something like a song, like collaboration instead of chaos. Riku blinked. It listened. Hana grinned. You don't have to silence it. You can shape it. They practiced for days. Each morning, Riku learned to play with the balloon instead of against it. He matched his breathing to its rhythm. He whispered feelings out instead of locking them in jars. He laughed once. It startled everyone, including himself. I forgot what that sounded like, he said, stunned. But it wasn't easy. One afternoon, The balloon flared, redder than ever. It shrieked a note so loud it cracked a lantern window. Riku dropped the flute, covering his ears. I can't do it. It's too much. Hana held him gently. Souta retrieved the flute, hands steady. Then, something small and surprising happened. Souta played. Just a single note. But it matched the balloon's rage. And for the first time, Souta made a sound that the balloon responded to. Riku looked up, stunned. You feel that too? Souta nodded. That night, Riku opened one of his jars. Not to destroy it, but to read it aloud. Inside, written in messy scrawl, were 3 words. I miss her. He whispered it again. I miss her. Hana didn't ask who. She didn't need to. Neither did Souta. The balloon drifted lower, quieter, the red cooling to something softer, like strawberries left in morning dew. I don't hate it anymore, Riku said, voice breaking. I just didn't want to be alone in the noise. They left 2 days later. Riku stood on the hilltop, balloon floating gently above him like a sun that no longer burned. Come back sometime, he called. I'll write a song for all the kids who think their feelings are too loud. Souta raised his hand in a silent promise. Hana smiled, eyes shining. And as they disappeared down the slope, the wind carried a new sound. A boy's laugh. Not trying to hide. Not trying to fight. Just free. Chapter 6. The Girl with Too Many Balloons. The village of Yamaji was quiet. Too quiet, even for Souta. The air was still, the trees barely moved, and no balloons floated above the rooftops. Hana frowned as they walked through the cobbled streets. Where are the children? They passed shuttered windows, silent swings, and empty shoes left on doorsteps. It felt like someone had plucked the laughter out of the air, like a song cut off mid-note. Then they heard it. A low, delicate hum, not from above, but below. Souta pointed to a well near the village center. Its stones were mossy, its bucket untouched. But from its depths, a soft melody rose like bubbles. It was a lullaby. Fragile, gentle, overwhelming. They found the girl beneath the sakura tree at the edge of the town. She was sitting alone, surrounded by balloons. Dozens of them. All different colors, all glowing softly, some trembling, some steady, some pulsing like hearts. None were tied to her. They floated around her like moons around a planet, too many to count. Her name was Miwa. I hold their feelings for them, she said. The ones they can't carry. She was small, maybe younger than Hana, but she spoke with a kind of sadness that belonged to someone much older. When someone cries too much, I take their balloon. When they get angry and don't know why, I keep it safe. If a parent disappears, I catch it before it bursts. She smiled, tired. I guess I've become a little balloon collector. Miwa's own balloon was white. Not blank, not silent, just empty. It had no sound of its own. Souta stepped closer. The girl didn't flinch. In fact, she looked relieved. You're not scared of them? She asked. He shook his head. Most people are. They say it's wrong to carry what doesn't belong to me. Hana knelt beside her, brushing a leaf from Miwa's hair. And what do you say? Miwa blinked. I say someone has to. The village had a secret. When Hana and Souta visited the schoolhouse, they met no students. Just rows of dusty desks and a chalkboard with fading words. Balloons must be silenced in public spaces. A local shopkeeper, old and hunched, whispered the rest. There was an accident. One boy's balloon burst during recess. It was grief. It hurt the others to hear it. So the elders made rules. No visible balloons. No sharing feelings. No music in school. That's when Miwa started taking them, the old man said. The village let her. Quiet was easier. That night, Miwa showed them her garden. It was a grove of hollow trees strung with colored threads, each tied to a balloon. The forest glowed. This is where I keep the ones that cry at night, she said. I hum to them until they calm down. Souta placed a hand over his chest. Even without words, it hurt. You don't have to carry them all alone, Hana said gently. I do, Miwa said. If I let even one go. She turned her face away. They might disappear. The next morning, something changed. One of the balloons, a soft green one, burst without warning. It let out a sharp, childlike sob. Miwa collapsed to her knees. That one was Yuchan's, she gasped. She moved away last week. I guess she doesn't need it anymore. Tears ran silently down her face. Hana held her. You loved that one, didn't you? She told it bedtime stories, Miwa whispered. She used to fall asleep talking to it. Souta knelt beside them. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small box with 5 tuned strings across it, like a harp you could hold. He plucked the lowest string. It echoed the cry of the green balloon, but softer. Then, the next string, a gentle lullaby. Miwa listened. Her eyes widened. Is that her goodbye? Together, they played. Each balloon had a voice, a story, a goodbye waiting to be heard. Miwa let them go, one by one. Not destroyed. Not forgotten. Just freed. And as they rose into the night sky, the village slowly stirred. Windows opened. Doors creaked. For the first time in years, children stepped outside. Some even sang. On their final day, Miwa gave Hana and Souta a gift, a bracelet woven from balloon threads. For the ones you'll carry, she said. Souta signed something to her, hands small and sure. Hana translated, you don't have to be the whole sky. Just one star is enough. Miwa laughed, a sound like bells and wind chimes. She lifted her white balloon and whispered into it. For a moment, it turned pink. Then it floated upward, glowing faintly, like a promise. Chapter 7. The Child Who Refused to Feel. There was something eerie about the town of Hazamachi. No trash littered the ground. No windows were cracked. Every street lamp worked. Every shoe was neatly placed on doorsteps. But the children? They had no balloons. Not hidden. Not broken. Not quiet. None. Not a single balloon floated in the sky, or bobbed from tiny wrists, or hovered at playgrounds. It was as if no child in the town had ever felt anything at all. They met him at the town's edge. A boy, maybe 8 years old, stood facing a puddle. He didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't even flinch when Hana called out, "Hey, are you okay?" He turned slowly. His face was blank. Not sad. Not scared. Just nothing. Hana's voice softened. "Where's your balloon?" He blinked once. "I don't have one." Souta stepped closer. The boy added, "Nobody here does." His name was Now. He invited them inside a small white house that looked like it had never been lived in. The couch had no cushions. The floor was spotless. The walls had no pictures. "My parents said feelings caused disorder," he said calmly. "So we learned not to have any." Hana stared, stunned. But how? Now opened a drawer. Inside was a small cube. Plain. Plastic. "They gave us these. They're called nullifiers. Whenever we feel something, we hold it. It hums. Then the feeling goes away." He placed it in her hands. It was cold and silent. "When I was little," he continued, "I cried when I lost a toy. My dad gave me this." He said feelings were weak. Souta flinched. Hana's fingers clenched the cube like it might bite. At night, the streets echoed with quietness. Even the dogs didn't bark. Children passed them in lines, eyes forward, voices low. Their steps made no rhythm. Their presence was like shadows pretending to be real. Hana whispered to Souta, "I don't like this place." He didn't either. The next morning, Now brought them to a field. "This used to be our balloon meadow," he said, "before the town voted to ban emotions." Souta raised an eyebrow. "It was after the flood," Now added. "So many people cried that week. The town said grief was dangerous. It spreads too fast." He looked up at the empty sky. "My sister's balloon popped during the storm. She never got a new one." "Where is she now?" Hana asked. Now shrugged. "She doesn't speak anymore." Souta's heart ached. They decided to try. Hana handed Now one of Souta's simpler instruments, a reed pipe with only 2 notes. "Don't think," she said. "Just blow, even if it's wrong." He hesitated. Souta nodded, encouraging. Now raised the pipe to his lips. The first note was sharp. The second wobbled. Then, nothing. "No," he said flatly, handing it back. "It doesn't work." "Not yet," Hana said gently. But that wasn't nothing. That was the sound of someone trying. That night, Now's sister came to see them. Her name was Mari. She was pale, with eyes like glass, reflecting everything but showing nothing. In her hands, she held a shoebox. Inside it, dozens of tiny balloon fragments. All different colors, carefully folded, some still glittering faintly. Hana gasped. "You kept them?" Mari didn't speak, but she knelt beside Souta and placed the box between them. Souta reached inside. The pieces sang. Not loudly, not clearly, but enough. Each scrap had a note, a sound of something once felt, once cherished. He took out his strings and played the fragments like memories. One high, One deep, one trembling. Mari smiled, just barely. Now stared. I didn't know they still had music in them. They never lost it, Hana said. You just forgot how to listen. The next morning, the children gathered. Not because they were told to, because they felt something. Curiosity, wonder, fear. One by one, they brought hidden balloon pieces, kept in drawers, buried in backyards, folded in coat pockets. Each child offered one. Souta played. Hana sang. The meadow filled again, not with full balloons, but with shards of songs. And in that, something healed. Now watched it all. His fingers clenched the nullifier. Then he let it drop. And when it hit the ground, it didn't hum. It cracked. For the first time, his face twisted, not in fear or sadness, but anger. I was sad, he said, when they told me to stop crying. I hated it. A red flicker appeared above his head. A balloon. Small. Fragile. Real. Hana stepped forward. Feelings don't make you weak. They make you human, Souta signed. Now reached up, and the balloon didn't vanish. It grew. They left Hazamachi as the wind picked up. Children now dotted the fields, watching their new old feelings float again. Not everyone smiled. Not everyone laughed. But everyone felt. And that was more than enough. Chapter 8. The Balloon That Lied. They arrived at Mitsubane on a morning painted in soft gold, the kind of sunlight that made puddles sparkle and leaves hum like lullabies. At first glance, the town seemed perfect. Children danced in the square, laughter echoing off polished windows. Every wrist bore a balloon. Every balloon shimmered, some even with ribbons and bells. Too perfect, Hana whispered. Souta nodded, already uneasy. Because something was off. Every balloon glowed the same warm peach color. Every single one. The mayor welcomed them with open arms. Ah, travelers, he boomed, a little too cheerfully. We love visitors. Come, come, see how happy our children are. He guided them through streets of choreographed joy. Girls giggled at painted benches. Boys skipped rocks that seemed to land like applause. Hana tilted her head. Why are all the balloons the same color? The mayor smiled wide. Peach is the color of contentment. We've made it the town standard. Standard? Souta's eyes narrowed. Yes, we've discovered a marvelous trick, an invention called the harmony bell. It filters every emotion and replaces it with something pleasant. Nothing messy. No grief. No anger. Just peace. He beamed. Isn't that beautiful? Hana whispered to Souta. It's not peace. It's pretending. They met the boy later that day, crouched beneath a rusted slide at the edge of a quiet park. His balloon was peach too, but scratched and trembling. My name's Shin, he said, not looking up. You shouldn't stay here too long. Why? Hana asked softly. Because the harmony bell doesn't like dissonance. He showed them a scar on his arm. They said I resisted the recalibration, that I was holding onto a toxic tone. He touched his balloon. I wasn't even sad. I just didn't want to smile that day. At night, Hana and Souta snuck out of their guest house and followed Shin. He led them behind the schoolhouse, down a gravel path, into a shed where no light reached. Inside were dozens of balloons, real ones. Not peach. They were dusty, dim, and silent. Some flickered like broken bulbs. Others pulsed faintly with buried feelings. They belonged to kids who didn't fit in, Shin whispered. They made them swap for peach once. These got stored here like trash. He touched a deep violet balloon. This one was my sister's. She used to feel too much, laughed too loudly, cried when she was proud of someone. He looked away. They sent her away. Souta gently reached for the violet balloon. The second he touched it, a sound burst through the room, a roar of joy, the kind that cracked skies and made rivers blush. It was raw and beautiful and real. Then silence again, but not emptiness, just the pause between heartbeats. Hana turned to Shin. We're going to help you. The next day, they stood in the center of the town square. Souta wore his stringed instrument like a badge. Hana had tied 10 mismatched balloons to her back. Shin stood with them. The mayor approached, frowning now. What is this? A concert, Hana said. One song. Just one. Let them hear it. Souta plucked a string. It was a quiet, cracked note. Then another. Together, they wove a melody from the stolen feelings in the shed. Not perfect, not polished, but true. The harmony bell rang. It screeched. 1,000 peach balloons trembled, dimmed, and changed. One turned blue, another red, then green, then gray. A rainbow unfurled. Children blinked, staggered, touched their chests like they'd just awakened from a long sleep. One girl sobbed. Another laughed. A boy knelt and whispered, I remember. I remember being scared. And still, Souta played. The bell cracked. A shimmer spread like ink in water, and then silence. The kind of silence after a storm. Not dead, just full. Shin's balloon turned deep violet again, steady and luminous. He looked at Souta. Thank you, he whispered. Then, to Hana, do you think they'll let us feel again? She nodded. Not all at once, but one note at a time. When they left Mitsubane, the sky above them rippled with color. Peach still floated there, but now beside indigo, teal, silver, gold. No more standard, only spectrum. And for the first time, the children laughed differently. Each laugh like a different chord, resonating in Souta's chest until he thought, maybe one day my own will join them. Chapter 9. The Balloon That Couldn't Let Go. The village of Yorimo was quiet, nestled between sleepy hills where mist clung to rooftops like forgotten lullabies. It wasn't a broken place. It wasn't cruel. It was simply still. No children played in the streets. No laughter echoed across fences. The only sound was the occasional wind chime, soft, distant, as if afraid to speak too loudly. At the edge of the town sat a girl beneath a tree, holding a balloon that refused to float. Her name was Mika. She was 12, with a tangled braid, round glasses too big for her face, and a soft voice like a paper page turning. Her balloon was dark gray, almost heavy-looking. It sagged in the air beside her, dragging like a stone on a string. I can't let it go, she said the moment Hana asked. Souta tilted his head. His hands hovered near his bag, but he didn't open it yet. Mika continued, I've tried. Everyone says I should. They even gave me scissors. She pulled a rusted pair from her coat pocket. I even held them once, but I couldn't cut it. She looked up. I think it's because I don't want to forget her. Mika lived alone with her grandmother, a kind old woman who barely spoke and spent her days knitting loops she never finished. She used to float too, Mika said as they walked the overgrown path behind the school. Her balloon's gone now. She says some balloons vanish when they've stretched too far. They passed a grove of forget-me-nots and wind-blown pinwheels. She doesn't remember much anymore, Mika added. But I remember for both of us. She gestured at the gray balloon. It's my sister's. She gave it to me before she went away. That night, Hana lay awake in the barn where they were staying. The stars peeked through a broken window, whispering their slow silver lullaby. Souta sat nearby, turning over a broken tuning fork in his hand. She's holding someone else's feeling, Hana said. He nodded. She thinks that by keeping it, she's keeping her sister. Another nod. But it's dragging her, not lifting her. Souta signed carefully. It's not wrong to hold it. But maybe she needs to understand it first. Hana smiled gently. Then tomorrow we play. They invited Mika to the hilltop. She came with her heavy balloon in both hands, as if afraid it might fall apart if she let it dangle. Souta set up a strange new instrument, part harp, part hollow box, part glass tubes threaded with threads of cloud. He motioned for her to sit. Hana said, We want to hear what your balloon is carrying. I don't know if it will sing, Mika said. Souta reached out, and the moment his fingers brushed the string tethered to the balloon, it wept. Not in sobs, not in screams, but in a slow, aching thrum, like the wind remembering someone. It was a low, resonant note that carried a small voice. Take care of her, Mika. Then another voice. This one Mika's, younger, higher, cracking. Don't go yet. Then silence, so full of weight it made Hana's throat close. Mika trembled. That was real. Souta touched the strings again, and the melody of a sister's goodbye unfolded. Not bitter, not angry, just unfinished. Mika wept for a long time. She didn't hide it, didn't turn away. Hana held her hand, and Souta sat still beside her as the balloon quivered and the mist drifted around them like breath. Eventually, Mika stood, and she said something none of them expected. I don't think I need to let it go. Hana blinked. You don't. Mika shook her head, wiping her eyes. I think I just needed to hear her one more time. Now I can carry her memory without carrying her weight. The balloon didn't vanish, but it changed. The gray brightened to a dusty lavender. It rose, just a little. Enough. That night, Souta played a new lullaby on the porch of Mika's house. It wasn't joyful, but it wasn't sad, either. It was a song for holding on, and also a song for moving forward. Two songs in one. Mika's grandmother watched, silent but smiling. And in her eyes, something stirred, an old light, blinking through the fog. When they left Yorimo, Mika gave Hana a pinwheel. I made it for her, she said. But maybe it belongs to someone else now. She placed it in Souta's hands. It only spins when you walk forward. As they journeyed down the winding road, the wind picked up, catching the pinwheel and making it twirl like a tiny, quiet dance. And Souta thought of all the songs he still hadn't played, all the feelings he still hadn't found. But now, he was beginning to believe his own would come, too. Maybe not today, but someday. Chapter 10, The Balloon That Told the Future. By the time they reached the hill village of Asanaro, autumn had begun to brush the trees with fire. Leaves flared crimson and orange, falling like pieces of sunlight that had forgotten how to burn. Asanaro sat on the cliffs above a sea of clouds. It was said the sky below it whispered at night, and that if you leaned far enough over the railing, you could hear tomorrow breathing. Hana leaned forward with wonder. Souta didn't. He watched the clouds instead, noting how they moved, slowly, deliberately, like something was waiting beneath. They met the child in the observatory. Her name was No, and her balloon shimmered like polished silver. She wore a telescope on her back, like a second spine. Her fingers were ink-stained and twitchy, always drawing constellations in the air. My balloon tells the future, she said plainly. Hana blinked. Really? No pointed upward. The stars are always talking. Most people just don't understand the grammar. Souta tilted his head. No smiled wryly. You think I'm strange. That's okay. I do too. In No's room were notebooks, hundreds of them. Each page was a chart, a dream, a sketch of what might be. A balloon's color changes with mood, she explained. But mine reacts to time. She held it up. It was flickering now, shifting from silver to a pale blue. Then back again. I think this means something is coming. Souta stared at it. He didn't know why, but something deep in him tugged sideways, like a string pulled taut inside his chest. No's balloon pulsed. It's not just my future I see, she whispered. It's yours too. That night, No set up a telescope on the cliffside and offered it to them. Look, Hana did. At first, it was just stars. Then she saw it, a slow movement, like a shadow crawling across the heavens. A falling star, she asked. No, No said. A message. It repeats every 7 nights. I think it's meant for you. Souta looked next. He couldn't see words, but he could feel something. A rhythm, a vibration in his bones. A song maybe, or a memory, trying to find its voice. The next day, No brought them to a hollow grove outside town. Trees arched above like cathedral bones. The air hummed with stillness. She held her balloon like a lantern. Every night, it flashes a little faster, she said. I think something important is getting closer. Hana frowned. Something good. No didn't answer. Instead, she placed her silver balloon in Souta's hands. Play it, she said. He hesitated. It vibrated against his skin, faster than any he'd touched before. He raised his fingers. The strings trembled. And then he played. A melody unlike any he'd ever known. It didn't begin. It unfolded. Notes layered over notes, some soft, some jagged, some like questions that never found answers. The balloon responded, flashing faster. Then, suddenly, a burst of sound, like wind, like thunder whispered into silk. And a single phrase, not in words, but something Souta understood deep in his ribs. Not all songs wait forever. After the music stopped, No was crying. I don't know what it means, she said. Only that something in you is moving now. Hana looked at Souta. He didn't nod, didn't shake his head. He was still, as if part of him had just heard the sound of his own balloon. That night, Hana woke from a dream. In it, Souta stood on a bridge of stars. His hands were empty. His eyes were wide. And 1,000 balloons floated above him, none of them his. He turned, spoke her name, but no sound came out. She told No the dream in the morning. No only said, then you need to hold on tighter. When they left Asanaro, No gave them a notebook. Inside was a chart, a prediction. 7 lines. 7 towns. The final one marked only with a question mark. Beneath it, your song is waiting. Hana closed the book carefully. Souta watched the clouds again, and this time, he imagined a voice in them, something soft, barely there, humming a note he hadn't yet learned. But he would. He had to. Chapter 11. The balloon that wasn't theirs. They wandered into the town of Kiora by accident. The sign was half buried in ivy, and the road was less a path than a whisper. It wasn't on any of Hana's maps, nor listed in No's stargazing notebook. But the wind tugged Souta's sleeve that morning with unusual urgency, and he followed without hesitation. The town was strange. Not broken, not lively, just suspended, as though it had forgotten what time was. There were no children, not one. The adults smiled, kindly, but vaguely, as if each greeting was a memory they couldn't quite remember offering. And overhead, a single balloon floated. It was enormous, translucent, pale violet and green and gold, all shimmering and folding into each other like oil on water. It bobbed in the air above the central square, tethered to nothing. Hana stared at it, stunned. That balloon's everyone's. They asked around. Whose is it? Hana inquired gently to the baker. The woman tilted her head. I believe it was here when I was a girl. But it's too big for one person, Hana added. Is it? The woman replied, as if surprised by the idea. Souta signed to Hana. It's not anchored, but it hasn't left. She nodded. It's like it's waiting for someone to notice. That night, they set up their instruments in the square beneath the balloon. The town gathered around, not with curiosity, but with a kind of quiet courtesy, like a tradition they didn't remember starting. Souta didn't play yet. He watched. The balloon shimmered in slow pulses. Not rapidly like No's, not jittery like Mika's. It pulsed like a breath, like a slow inhale, held just too long. He reached out and touched it. Music exploded, but not out loud. Inside, in every person present. A grandmother gasped and dropped her knitting needles. A boy, barely old enough to speak, began humming a lullaby no one had taught him. Two lovers reached for each other's hands at the exact same moment. And Hana heard something she hadn't heard since she was 6. Her mother's voice, saying, "Always chase the melody." Souta fell backward. Not from pain, from weight. The balloon had given him too much at once. Not just one feeling, not one memory. Everyone's. The crowd didn't speak. They stood in stunned stillness, tears on cheeks that didn't know why they wept. Then, one by one, people approached the balloon. They whispered to it. Small things. I miss you. Do you still dream of the lake? Forgive me. And the balloon shimmered a little brighter with each confession. That night, Hana helped Souta recover in the town library. He clutched his chest, not in pain, but in overwhelm. Too many voices had spoken through that balloon. Too many truths pressed against his silence. Hana gave him space. She walked through the aisles of the library, running her fingers along spines of books that hadn't been touched in years. One shelf was entirely empty, except for a single notebook. She opened it. Inside, pages of melodies. Unfinished. Dated generations ago. All titled, For the Balloon. In the morning, the town was quieter, but lighter. The balloon had risen higher, as if the confessions had made it float freer. Hana and Souta stood at the edge of town, watching it drift. Do you think it belongs to everyone? She asked. Souta sighed. Maybe it's what's left when no one says how they feel. Hana smiled. Then we'll keep saying it. In music, in stories, for as long as we can. As they walked on, the notebook Hana found nestled between their belongings. She didn't put it there. Neither did Souta. But it hummed softly when opened, and its pages began to fill, slowly, magically, with their journey. A story writing itself. Souta walked a little ahead that afternoon. Not rushing, just searching, like something in him had begun moving again. A melody trying to catch up to its player. Chapter 12. The Balloon Without a String. There was no path to the final town. Only forest. A hush, so deep and green it muffled even Hana's humming. Trees gathered like ancient witnesses, their leaves barely rustling. The sunlight came in scattered beams, as though the forest preferred its secrets in shadow. Souta led without looking at the map that he didn't need it. Something in his chest had begun to tug, a feeling not unlike a loose string pulling through a knot. He couldn't name it, but it pulled him forward, steady as breath. They arrived at a place that didn't have a name. No signs. No people. Just a small wooden bridge, spanning a creek so still it looked like glass. And on the other side, a balloon. It floated low, nearly brushing the ground. It was colorless. Not white. Not pale. Colorless. As if it refused all light. No string attached. No wind to lift it. It simply hovered, motionless. Hana stepped closer. Whose is it? Souta already knew. He just didn't know how. He touched it. Nothing. No shimmer. No pulse. No sound. And yet, he felt something. Not music. Not emotion. Absence. That night, they camped beneath it. Souta didn't eat. Didn't sign. He just stared. Hana didn't press him. She understood now what No's balloon had tried to say. What all the children's melodies had been circling. This balloon, it wasn't waiting to be played. It was waiting to be seen. In the morning, Hana reached into their bag and retrieved the first instrument Souta had ever made. A small wooden whistle shaped like a bird. Cracked now and barely usable. She handed it to him. Souta stared at it, then shook his head. His hands trembled. But Hana knelt beside him. You told the whole world stories, she whispered. It's okay if this one is yours. Souta stood. He didn't lift the balloon, didn't tether it, didn't force a song from it. Instead, he pressed his forehead to it, closed his eyes, and remembered. Not one memory. All of them. The silence of a house with no lullabies. The press of adults speaking around him, never to him. A classroom of voices, while his own stayed caged behind his ribs. The ache of wanting to share, to cry, to shout, but having no key to his own door. And then, the girl who listened anyway. The first time his music made someone smile. The first time someone understood. The balloon flickered. Just once. Barely noticeable. But Souta felt it. A tiny, wavering heartbeat. He picked up the whistle, brought it to his lips, and exhaled. The note was broken, thin, like it had forgotten how to sing. But it came. A sound. Not for others. For him. And the balloon. It glowed. Not bright. Not loud. Just enough to be seen. And then, gently, it floated upward. Souta didn't cry, but his breath shook. Hana took his hand. Was that your song? She asked. He didn't sign, didn't nod. But she felt the answer in his grip. Later, they stood on the wooden bridge again. The creek reflected the sky, the trees, the fading balloon now drifting out of sight. I think this was the last one, Hana said. Souta opened his notebook. Wrote just one line. Mine wasn't silent. Just waiting. They didn't speak much on the walk back through the forest. They didn't need to. Something had shifted. Not finished, not ended. Just found. That night, under a dome of stars, Hana took out the melody notebook, the one that had been writing itself. She flipped to the newest page. It had a title now. Balloon Strings. Below it, new ink flowed. A song composed from the emotions of children. A journey through color, sound, and silence. Two voices. One spoken, one felt, and 1,000 truths in between. She added one more line. Every silence is still a song, if someone listens. Chapter 13, The Last Note. The road home wasn't the same road they'd come from. It twisted differently, bent in stranger ways. The wind hummed in minor chords. The sky, bluer, but lonelier. Souta and Hana didn't speak much. Not from sadness, but from the kind of fullness that makes you quiet. The kind that sits in the chest like a sleeping bird. They passed old places. Fields where children once ran with balloon strings trailing behind like comets. A riverside where No had first learned his stars were meant to be shared. An orchard where a girl's joy once shimmered like bell chimes in golden light. Memories waited in the soil. Echoes hummed in every tree. But they didn't linger. Not this time. They returned to the hill. The one with the lone tree that had always waited for them. The tree where the wind never quite stopped moving, and where the balloons always found their way back. Dozens now. Maybe hundreds. All colors. All sizes. Some trembling with laughter, some soft with longing, some quietly weeping, even after all these months. Souta looked up at them all, as if reading a sky full of forgotten letters. And then, for the first time, one of the balloons trembled when it saw him. It was red. Not loud or bright, but deep, like a lantern in the rain. It drifted down slowly. Unafraid. Souta reached up. and the balloon pressed into his palm like a heartbeat. This one wasn't from someone else. It was his. He took it into the little workshop beside the tree, the one he and Hana had built together out of wood and silence and hope. He placed the balloon on the table, surrounded by the tools he once used to understand the world. He didn't pick up any of them. He didn't need to. Instead, he closed his eyes. And he listened. A low hum. Soft. Warm. His first laugh with Hana. The moment his fingers touched the whistle and didn't tremble. The time someone heard him without music. The melody he played just for himself. All of it. There was no need to translate it. It was already true. Hana stood in the doorway, watching. She didn't interrupt. She didn't offer a word. She just listened too. And when Souta finally opened his eyes, he smiled. Not wide, not perfect, but real. They sat together under the tree as evening crept in, laying soft shadows across the hill. Below them, the world continued. Children were still feeling, still dreaming, still filling the sky with balloons that waited to be seen. Hana opened her notebook, the one still writing itself. The pages were nearly full. A life in melodies, that a map made of feelings, that a boy who never spoke, and yet sang louder than anyone she'd ever met. She flipped to the final page. There were no words, just a line of music. Handwritten. Souta's. A melody so simple, it nearly vanished in the wind. But it didn't. As the last light dipped beneath the horizon, Souta reached into his pocket, pulled out a small paper string. He held it up to the breeze. Let it fly. Not to hold a balloon down, but to let one go. The red one. His. And as it rose, he didn't feel like something was leaving. He felt like something had finally come home.
Thanks for listening. Stay cozy, and I'll see you in the next story.